A study published this month in the journal Nature Geoscience, led by geologists at Utrecht University, found that ferns, of all things, helped turn parts of ancient Europe into a wildfire zone that burned for tens of thousands of years. During one of the largest mass extinctions in the planet's history. The event in question is the end-Triassic mass extinction, roughly 201 million years ago. Not to be confused with the far larger Permian extinction, sometimes called the Great Dying, which happened about 50 million years earlier and is a different event entirely. Researchers analyzing 4 deep drill cores, including a newly extracted 640-meter core from the United Kingdom, found fossil evidence that fern-covered landscapes kept catching fire, regrowing, and catching fire again, in a cycle that may have helped prolong the extinction event itself. Let us sort the signal from the noise. Back up to what caused this extinction in the first place. Around 201 million years ago, the supercontinent Pangaea was in the process of splitting apart, and that breakup triggered enormous volcanic activity, a geological event known as the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, which pumped massive volumes of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere over a relatively short geological window. That carbon dioxide drove global warming estimated at 5 to 10 degrees Celsius. A swing large enough to collapse tree-dominated forest ecosystems across large parts of the planet. With mature forests gone, disturbed, sun-exposed landscapes opened up. And in what is now northwest Europe, ferns moved in fast, forming dense, low-growing savannas across terrain that used to support tall trees. Ferns are hardy, fast-growing plants able to colonize damaged ground quickly, which made them one of the first things to recover after each disturbance. But that same hardiness is exactly what set up the wildfire cycle researchers describe in this new study. Explaining the actual method matters here, because reconstructing wildfire activity from 200 million-year-old sediment is not straightforward. The research team measured fossil charcoal preserved in the rock layers. Charcoal is essentially fossilized evidence that plant material burned, and combined it with measurements of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, chemical compounds produced specifically by combustion, which show up in distinct patterns when something has burned versus simply decayed. Layering those fire signatures against fossil pollen and spore records, which reveal what plants were growing at each point in time, let researchers reconstruct not just that fires happened, but how the surrounding vegetation shifted before and after each burn. Across all 4 drill cores, that combined evidence showed the same pattern repeating through the main extinction interval. Intense wildfire activity closely tracking with fern-dominated vegetation, in a way that lines up too consistently across independent sample sites to be coincidental. Here is the mechanism that makes this more than just background trivia. Ferns are exactly the kind of plant that regrows quickly after a fire clears the ground. And that fast regrowth created a fresh supply of flammable material sooner than a slower growing forest ever could. Every time fire cleared a patch of fern savanna, the ferns came back before other vegetation had a chance to re-establish, resetting the fuel supply and making the next fire more likely rather than less. A self-reinforcing loop researchers estimate lasted anywhere from 40,000 to 300,000 years. That is a strikingly long time for a single ecological feedback cycle to persist. And it suggests the ferns were not simply a passive casualty of the extinction event's warming. They were an active participant in prolonging the disturbance well after the initial volcanic trigger. A recovery pattern that keeps resetting itself is a fundamentally different, and worse, outcome than a landscape that burns once and then rebuilds towards stability. Some real caveats belong here. This study covers 4 drill cores concentrated in Northwest Europe. A specific regional record, not a direct global measurement. And the end-Triassic extinction played out differently across different parts of the planet. So extending this fire and fern cycle worldwide requires more evidence from other regions before it becomes a global claim rather than a regional one. The dating itself carries a wide margin. Researchers estimate the fern spike lasted somewhere between 40,000 and 300,000 years, a range spanning nearly an order of magnitude, which reflects real uncertainty in dating geological layers this old. The study also establishes a strong correlation between wildfire activity and fern dominance. Not proof that the fires alone caused, rather than accompanied, the extinction's severity. Volcanism, ocean acidification, and other factors were operating simultaneously. And several news outlets covering this study mislabeled the event as the Great Dying, which properly refers to the earlier, larger Permian extinction. A reminder that even accurate scientific findings can pick up factual errors on the way to a headline. Quick recap. Geologists analyzing 4 drill cores, including a new 640-meter core from the United Kingdom, found fossil charcoal and chemical fire signatures showing that fern savannahs repeatedly burned and regrew across Northwest Europe during the end-Triassic mass extinction 201 million years ago. Published this month in Nature Geoscience. So, signal or noise? Signal. This is peer-reviewed research built on physical evidence from multiple independent sample sites. And the fire and fern feedback loop it describes is a genuinely new piece of how that extinction unfolded. Some noise risk shows up only if you generalize a regional European record to the whole planet. Or read one contributing mechanism as the single cause of a mass extinction that also involved massive volcanism and ocean chemistry changes. The honest takeaway: a real discovery about one piece of an enormous, multi-factor puzzle, not a full explanation on its own. Subscribe for the history and science stories that separate what a study actually found from what the headline claims signal from the noise. Every week.